One unique thing I've noticed about anime is how long season gaps can be. You could have a season air and not get picked up for several years, but never officially get cancelled. They're just on hiatus. With some shows, that's not a problem. Konosuba, which wrapped up season 2 in 2017, is just starting its third season now. That's 7 years. But because the story is relatively simple to follow, and it's got very iconic characters, jumping back in without needing a refresher isn't difficult. Kazuma is a perverted weak one. Megumin is obsessed with explosions. Darkness is a masochist and deviant. And Aqua is... yeah, she's something special. The same could be said for The Devil is a Part-Timer, though the break is even worse. That gap was 9 years. On a quick side note, I will say I like the way the Japanese titles for these seasons just go from 1 exclamation mark to 2. No need for any clunky subtitles, assuming that's what they're called. Not getting into a debate about in-show subtitles versus dubs. That's a fight I'm afraid to have on this platform. Though if you've ever seen some of my older videos that used lots of actual anime footage instead of stills, I typically resorted to dubs because they were easier to edit around. It wasn't because I preferred watching them. Just an unnecessary clarification I'm sure everyone's been wondering about. Now, where was I? Season gaps in anime. They're an interesting phenomenon, one that I have a love-hate relationship with. On the one hand, it's great that you can never completely rule out a follow-up season to a show you love. There's always some hope. Anime shows get revived all the time. Heck, even when they mess up on a show, they can always take another crack at it a few years later. Like Full Metal Alchemist. To be clear, I really liked both iterations of that show. But I completely understand why most feel Brotherhood is superior. Maybe I'll make a short video on remakes someday. Not today though. I just think there's something nice about knowing your favorite shows are rarely definitively dead. But the gaps can also make it very hard to get back into a show. I remember watching Log Horizon shortly after finishing the original SAO arc and really enjoying it. The anime felt like a more complex version of that previous series, which is a drastic oversimplification of things, but I loved the focus on the broader economics and politics of a society living within a virtual world. It made everything feel very grounded and compelling to my young mind. Then Season 2 ended at the beginning of 2015, and Season 3 didn't air until 2021. While 6 years might not seem excessive by anime standards, this show is a bit more intricate than many others. I got 1 episode into Season 3, and quickly realized I didn't remember the show well enough to continue without rewatching the first 2 seasons. I remember enjoying them, but I don't know if I liked them enough for that kind of undertaking. A show has to be incredibly good for me to feel the urge to revisit it. There are just so many new anime on my to-watch list it's hard to justify going back to a series I've already watched. So 3 years after Season 3 aired, and I still haven't gotten past Episode 1. My general understanding is that this approach is somewhat unique to anime, because of the manga and light novels so many of these properties are based on. They often end up having to wait for the source material to get further ahead. That's the biggest reason why a show as popular as One Punch Man had a nearly 4-year gap between seasons, and it's now been 4 years since Season 2. It's why Attack on Titan took 10 years to roll out its 4 seasons. It's why Hunter x Hunter ran from 2011 to 2014 and hasn't had an episode since. Because the creator's numerous health problems have prevented him from making much progress in continuing that story. Money isn't an issue. Neither is concern about dwindling interest from fans. The existing story material studios need to make a successful adaptation just hasn't been produced yet, and it's best not to alienate your audience by deviating from the author's vision. No Game No Life is an odd one though. Very popular, very well regarded, with light novels that are well ahead of where the anime wrapped up its first and only season. Still holding out hope on this one, but it's been 10 years now. Maybe the story goes in a direction producers aren't comfortable with. It's certainly got some interesting relationships, and it's hard to imagine any other reason to table this series for so long. There isn't really anything comparable in the West. Cancelled shows do occasionally get picked back up, but they still get officially cancelled. It's never the plan to take a multi-year break in the middle of a TV series. This is largely because they're rarely being adapted from ongoing works. The only example I can think of is Game of Thrones, and they never planned on waiting on the books. Frankly, it's a lot harder to delay shows when dealing with live action. The productions are more expensive, there's a lot of setup and logistics involved, and actors age out of roles. While many animated series may draw inspiration from existing stories, they mainly do their own thing, like The Magic School Bus, or Arthur. And when they do have larger arcs, they're once again adapted from completed stories, like Amazon's Invincible, which is based on a comic by that same name that ran from 2003 to 2018. Or Troll Hunters, adapted from a book the cartoon's director wrote a year earlier. Though perhaps this one shouldn't count, as these properties were likely being developed at the same time. Del Toro is first and foremost a director. On a somewhat related note, I wish more cancelled shows would do what Final Space is doing. When Olin Rogers, the creator, realized it wouldn't be picked up for season 4, he commissioned a comic to complete the story, set for release later this year. I hate it when I get invested in a series and never get to figure out what happens. The Serenity comics do something similar for the short-lived Firefly live-action series that aired a lifetime ago. That's a storyline I would love to see adapted into an anime. Who wouldn't want to see an animated version of this world? All this is to say, I find the season gaps in anime to be a unique and interesting phenomenon. As an American, it's easy to forget that a show skipping a year isn't necessarily indicative of the anime's future. Japanese cartoons move at their own pace, whereas if we don't hear of a recent series getting picked back up in the US after a few months, we assume the worst. The earlier an announcement is made, the more confident we can be that a studio will continue that story. Anime delays are different, they're just part of anime being anime. Until next time, peace.